Okay, we'll now start a series of presentations by laboratory and industry experts. Please allow me to welcome Mr. Justin Hunter, owner and operator of Fiji Pearls, to talk to us about pearling and the environment, the Blue Pledge.
Thank you to Danath and to Mr. Kenneth Scarrett for this opportunity, and it is a pleasure to be here. The Blue Pledge, well, this is something that I started several years ago. I believe, and I think it becomes more and more evident as science mounts, that pearls have a unique role to play in developing the true definition of the blue economy. And I think as an industry, it's quite an honor, even though I'm from the cultivating cultured pearl part of the industry, to come and speak here, because we do rely on the same environment and have the same principles. Cultured pearls come from some of the most remote and beautiful coastal and island communities in the world that are also on the front lines of the battle with climate change. And this has been 18 years really of experience in creating this, but it's really been the last 2.5 years that really has initiated the start of the Blue Pledge. Pearls are linked intrinsically to the environment, as we know. Beautiful pearls come from pristine tropical environments. Oysters have and always been known as indicator species, which means that the marine environment has a direct link to their health. Any decrease in the marine environment usually leads to a decrease in oyster health, pearl quality, and mortality. Whether pearl farmers have known it or not, they've always been stewards of the sea, because you've always got to look after your own business. And when you look after your own business, you're also looking after the environment that your business relies on. In 2007, I put together an environmental code of practice and went to one of my auctions in Japan and gave it to all of the auction participants, thinking it was just such a great idea. But I don't think any of them listened. But I had a firm belief at that time that the best marketing for pearls and the cultured pearl industry was about the social, cultural, and environmental impacts that pearls can have in some of these remote, beautiful parts of the world. It did get some traction, because I know it influenced Dr. Laurent Cartier to start Sustainable Pearls, and that allowed me to go and talk about pearls by the Tiffany and Company Foundation, and I was appointed to the Pearl Steering Committee, also because of the work on environmental impacts and pearls. So I'm very, very happy I did that. And up until that time, up until 2016, I thought, this is a great marketing platform. I believed it, but it wasn't maybe as real. But then in 2016, Fiji got hit by Cyclone Winston, which at that time was the second strongest cyclone ever to make landfall anywhere. It was the strongest ever to make landfall in the South Pacific. Our farm losses were massive. After several weeks of assessing the impacts of it, I didn't want to tell my staff, but I was very worried about our very survival. And as I was talking to the 51 staff we had then that day, I said, we're going to have to look at some ways to reduce costs, whether we just break down and figure out a roster system or something. And one of my managers, who had been with us for 18 years, stood up and said, Bossa, we had a meeting before you came, and we're willing to volunteer, whether it's 3 months or 6 months. You don't have to pay us until the company is ready and able to pay us again. And I think when something like that hits you, you really start to realize the role you have. And, we, for weeks, we'd lost 30 kilometers of oyster lines with floats. And we had floats all over the bay. And, I'm talking about a very poor country. And, but every day these ladies would show up, and sometimes cars of some of our floats, and we used to pay for them, and nobody wanted money. And, it was something that empowered you, that you realized that what you'd been saying before, all of a sudden it hits you. It's a lot more important than just marketing. And this story has to get out there. And I think I've pushed it quite a bit to that regard. And I think the last one there is, pearls matter more than we think. And I think we've got a great platform to reach a lot more people. What was also part of this fantastic and unique story and adventure journey that I've been on is 2016, I was almost wiped out by an incredible cyclone. Well, what are the chances that in 2017, the country, my home, Fiji, co-chairs UN Oceans at Oceans Day, June 2017? And I did, after 2016, I'd already gotten into my head what I was doing. Seeing SDG 14 enabled me to put together, and I put together the Fiji Pearl Development Plan, and presented at the UN. And if that wasn't enough, then in 2018, Fiji is the COP23 president. And COP really presented another unique learning experience for me, because you start to look at Paris Accord, the climate change, and you notice that they never talk about ocean issues. And one thing that Fiji did was create Oceans Pathway, which was a way that ocean issues also could be addressed as part of climate, as part of COP in the Paris Accord. And so that has come into part of this thinking process. And then I've also spoken at Blue Economy conferences in Kenya, Nairobi, and there's a line that I always pull out of there. It's a significant issue is the sustainable management of ocean resources requires collaboration across nation states, and it needs to be public-private sectors on a scale that has never been achieved. And all of these steps and what happened in 2016, and I've been going to these conferences and I've been going to the UN Ocean things because I believe in validation through association. I'm not even sure if that makes sense, but to me it does. And that is, if we're going to market pearls in the future, we have to create this validation. We don't want to be certified. We don't want that. We want to prove to the scientists, to everybody who listens, that we are good for the environment. We are part of the blue industry. And so I've been on a tear, and we will stand in front of ocean scientists and conservation groups and say there is nothing we do that is bad. In fact, everything we do is, when it's done right and properly, is good for our oceans. As I said, would like to just say thank you for the opportunities. It has been, SIBJO has been there, Sustainable Pearls Oceans Conference. We did use, as I said, Fiji was very important throughout all of this in creating this vehicle called Oceans Pathway. And the other two co-founders of this, and I'm not even sure where we're going with the Blue Pledge to this day. I think, we're still developing whether it's an association, a foundation, how it's going to work. But Paz Bailey of Australia and Julmer of the Philippines have been there developing this with me, with Dr. Cartier. And so in 2018, it was at Climate Action Pacific Partnership, which is part of a COP group that was done in the Pacific. The Blue Pledge was officially launched by Peter Brasher and myself. And it was a pledge to bring together pearl farmers to contribute to the health of our oceans, and inspire consumers. I mean, we're all in a business here, but we believe that if we can reach out to the conscientious consumer and they know how good this product is and how it helps people in these most important places, that this is how we grow the industry. We're not interested in just the normal traditional confines of luxury. We want to go outside of that. We believe that there's a lot of pull. And as Pearl Farmers, we believe that we are the definition of the circular blue economy, of a blue industry. And especially when the farms themselves, and that's where we have a certain responsibility. We have to make sure that our own industry is going to be corporate, social, and environmentally responsible also. We do have 7 of those pillars, which this is founded on, and this is pretty much what we do anyways. Protection of the biosphere is protection of our oceans. We can't let anybody else do it, ruin our waters. Product transparency and product disclosure is something I think as an industry we all have to work on. All of these things, these are the 7, I would say, pillars of what the Blue Pledge stands on. And when you talk about the preservation of marine ecosystems, our 3 farms are located in areas of limited opportunities, yet host the greatest concentration of marine biodiversity on the planet. And I'll come back to that in a bit. However, as I stated and we saw earlier, we are prone to the impacts of climate change. We're on the front lines of climate change. And it's really this tropical marine biodiversity that our farms are located in, which is fundamental concern to our whole entire planet, and part of how our planet is able to adapt to warming sea temperatures. Well, you need to have tropical marine species preserved. And when you talk about polar migration, and that's what I'm talking about here, and biodiversity and how this works, is the marine areas that we're in, which has this high amount of biodiversity, that biodiversity is basically immeasurable in a time when you've got warming sea temperatures, and you know that the species that are most likely to survive over the next few years and 50 years are actually ones that are on our tropical reefs now, that are most suited to warm seawaters. We live on probably 0.01% of the Earth's surface area is tropical reefs, but yet it hosts up to 40% of all marine species. That's a huge amount. And it is vital to we need to protect these species in order for them to be able to adapt. And what you're seeing now up here is a couple of magazine articles just showing you what exactly polar migration is. The first is salmon dying, and we've been seeing a lot of that in Alaska, also in Scotland, over in Europe, because of water temperatures getting too high. The second is that big cod there. That was only found in the Great Barrier Reef of Australia. However, now, today, it's found on the North Island of New Zealand, 3,000 kilometers away. It's going to be tropical fish, tropical species that are going to fill the void left behind when the cold species move further north and south and get compressed. So it's really, we're protecting a genetic bunker that the rest of the world needs. And how do we do that exactly? Well, pearl farming provides ecosystem services. We augment wild fisheries and habitat provisioning. That means the farms themselves are quasi like marine protected areas, because we do have a lot of infrastructure there where fish are able to live and breed. They're also filter feeders. They feed on algae, and thereby they remove a lot of nitrates and phosphates from tropical environment Nitrates and phosphates are a grave concern to tropical reefs. That's what our species are there because of the lack of them. And so when all of a sudden you're getting too much nutrients, that is a problem. But pearl oysters can filter, the black lip filters up to 1,400 liters a day. And as it's filtering, it's cleaning that water over and over again. And that process also creates acidification regulation. And one aspect that people are slowly starting to wake up to is that all our shells are made out of calcium carbonate, which is technically a carbon sink. You know, it's a blue carbon sink. Everybody's wondering how to plant more trees, you know, to offset your carbon emissions. Well, pearl shells and pearls themselves are blue carbon sinks. But probably the greatest aspect of pearl farming in these areas is, I always say, the greatest threat to our tropical marine environment is poverty. As I said, we come from some of the most remote places in the world. There's not a lot of opportunities, and all of a sudden, but we do have pearls. And when you're able to merge conservation and economic returns, create jobs and employment, then you've really created what is this circular blue economy. And again, when you're creating conservation, promoting it, you need it to live on, and you're also providing jobs. That is the blue economy. What we'd like to do, we all know, I think we all see that luxury isn't growing as fast as we would like it to. We know that there's quite a bit of what is called the conscientious consumer or the young generation, that we need to find a way to pull them into luxury. They're out there, and we believe that the Blue Pledge can do this. It is the only sustainable gem. We need to develop traceability, though, so that we can tell the story of our farms at the point of retail sales. Get people involved. Let them know where their purchase, where their dollars go, and how they contribute directly to conservation. And it's just one of these unique opportunities where you create a win-win. I'll just show a video here real quick before I finish up. Well, Sabu Sabu, was a place where I've got family up and down this whole coast, and it was a very early place where a lot of the early Europeans came to Fiji, and then subsequently intermarried with locals, and so it's kind of a melting pot within Fiji.
We're a little different from other farms because these are our communities, so it's not like a foreigner coming in and working with an indigenous community. We are Fijian, and so these are our communities and our people. So, I see it more as our family coming together to create something unique and beautiful, and so it's something we're very proud of.
Company has been assisting us in terms of our projects that we had in the village. It elevated our standard of living.
To really be part of a community, you have to invest both short-term and long-term, and wages and contracts are a way to invest short-term, hoping that they invest long-term. But we also, take special interest in making sure that education is available for people here, giving opportunities to sometimes for students that wouldn't have them, investing in these communities. We've done footpaths, hygiene, helped with hygiene issues, halls, and even electrification in some villages further up the coast. And that's building, that's having a long-term view. We'd like to invest in them because, these are going to be the people that'll be working on the farm and hopefully with us in the future.
I've never run a business in my life. If you want to go well on pearl farming, outside of Fiji, it has to go through one system. And that is why I'm going through Justin Hunter.
And during the winter, everything got wiped away because our hatchery was just near the beach, so everything got wiped away.
I always use the catchphrase inspired by nature, and I guess it's part of living in the tropics, but also when you're dealing with a gem that is what I call farmed and not mined. It's really fortunate to be at the end part of it all, where I get to play with the beautiful side of it, the finished side of an amazing product that's created by such a humble oyster.
When you buy a pearl, you should feel like you're not just buying a beautiful piece of jewelry or a beautiful pearl, but you should feel like you're investing in our oceans and the long-term health of our planet. When you've got a pearl farm and you've got this community that starts to rely on it, all of us become stewards of the sea. All of us become more involved. And if that creates a domino effect where any kind of development has to be done properly here, and we set a bar, and then that moves on to grow within our country, and we're setting a higher platform. That's kind of a cool video that was done. I just wanted to show, and what has happened within the last month is I also wrote a paper to the government. It was almost a year and a half ago now, where I wanted to create the first blue town. Not a green town, not a sustainable town, but a blue town that is based on conserving the ocean around us and creating economic returns. And that was actually just last month. That was passed 2 months ago by Fiji's cabinet, and it will be taken up to the UN. We've already got Foster's and Apple and all sorts of very unique and influential people. Think of the fuel companies, as an example, who want to come in here and show off their alternative or sustainable products. Think of the value, think of the reach that we can have by creating, and it all starts from pearls. And so this is very exciting, and I think we will hope to see, these kind of towns replicated throughout the Pacific, not necessarily with pearls, but creating ways to conserve our environment, but creating economic opportunities also. So, this has all been fun, part of the story, and thank you for being here, and I think that's about it. Thank you.